Okay, in chapter 13, we're finally going to start getting some answers around here. You may recall, you certainly recall, that the first chapter of Tanya lays out a whole bunch of questions based on this concept as it is described and explored in the Gemara about these terms, tzaddik and Beinoni, and so on. And we left with a bunch of questions. So it's not that we're just teasing you, but in order to get to the answer, we're going to have to first, as we have done over the first 12 chapters, laid out the chess match, the different powers of both the self-serving, animating human soul and the God-serving, godly soul. And then we discussed their clash. And then we discussed the various shades of what, quote, success means. How far away can we drive the gnawing animal soul and reawaken the godly soul in its dominance? So there's a bunch of questions that have been hanging out there, and we are finally going to start to get some answers because now that we have a fuller background of understanding, we're in a position to really start to answer those questions. So the chapter begins with the letter Vav, and remember our rule of thumb that whenever a chapter begins with the letter Vav, that's an indicator that it is a continuum of the previous chapter. It's not a new theme. In the previous chapter, we discussed the status of the Beinoni. The chapter before that, the Russia. The chapter before that, which would be chapter 10, the Tzaddik. So it's a very general reminder to keep it in the fore of our thinking. Everyone has what we call the two aspects: the expressed behavior, which includes what we willfully think about, machshava, what we say, dibor, and what we do, maisa. Those are referred to as the garments. Just as a garment is put on, but just because I put it on doesn't mean someone else can't put it on. So when the godly soul takes control of it, that doesn't negate the possibility of the animal soul taking control of it. But our goal is to hold on to it very deeply, very intensely. And then we all have also what we call the koiches panimium, which we would translate as our inner or essential capacities or character traits. So again, there's a difference between being a nice person and doing nice things. Now, we don't have to choose one and not the other, but if we had to, we'd choose doing nice things over being a nice person. But we'd like to be a nice person who does nice things. So nice people who don't do nice things, they still may be nice in their character, but it's not manifest. And unnice people who force themselves to do nice things, it's much more pleasant and much more effective. But yet there's always the concern that, well, one day they're just not going to be able to force themselves to do the nice thing because they have not developed a character trait of niceness. And therefore, it's always going to be a battle. Now, that may be the case. I mean, that may always be the battle. And in a very broad sense, that's the Beinoni. Remember, one of the core themes of Tanya is that struggle is not failure, but failure is failure. So there's no excuse to say, well, I couldn't help myself because I can't always help myself. And the fact that it's hard for me doesn't exempt me from the obligation. And when I can achieve the execution of the godly action, that is in my conscious thought, spoken word, and deed, even if it's counter to my internal interest, I'd rather sit on the couch. We have effectively won that round. But the next round is just as much up for battle. And again, as we talked about in the previous chapter, there are moments of respite when a person feels so lofty and so aligned and so one with the infinity of Hashem that it's no longer a struggle. But we're cautioned because that's often the consequence of some external stimuli. And when that stimulus goes away, that loftiness goes away possibly as well. And then I come right back down into the struggles and difficulties that surround me. So, the goal of this chapter is to clarify, based on what we've understood over the previous 12 chapters, the different statements in the Talmud mean, as not just as an analysis of them, but how it helps us develop and flesh out our definition of this thing called the Beinoni. Because remember, as we learned in the beginning of the last chapter, Beinoni, according to Tanya, is not like some sort of accidental, almost fluke moment where, oh, look at that, I got 50 mitzvahs and 50 averas. It is actually a defined entity, and that is who I am going to be. I'm going to be the Bain, or I'm aspiring to be the Beinoni. And whether to be tzaddik may be out of my control. That's a gifted neshama. So what exactly does this mean? So I hope everybody managed to remember or whatever to look at or print out or um, the the handout that I sent. Um, if not, I could put it up on the board on the screen here. Gotta find it. Here it is. Okay. Uh, okay. So this is a Gemara that we talked about. I hope everyone can see it. I'll try to make it a little bigger. Whoop, maybe that's a little too big. Whoops. There we go. Whoop. Okay, here we go. This is the Gemara. The Gemara returns to the subject of the evil inclination. Tanya, we learned in a Brisa. Rabbi Yossi clearly would say the righteous are, now this is a little bit of a trick here, because it uses this word ruled, and we're going to change the meaning of that word ruled. So keep that in mind. And the word here is shoftan, and this is really the highlight that the Alter Rebbe points out, the nuance of it. But you see here, it's commonly been translated as ruled. Before the Alter Rebbe was translated as ruled. But the Hebrew word shoftan, the root of that word is the word shofet. A shofet is a judge. That's a standard word in Torah. By their good inclination, Yitzhar Tov, Shenez, it says, my heart, the evil inclination has died within me. The wicked are, again, ruled, but we're going to change that by their evil inclination. As it says, in my heart, evil speaks to the wicked, let there be no fear of good before his eyes. Beinim, and this is really us. And you see how it's translated, and this, again, was the standard understanding before Tanya. The average people, and again, we have described these not average, are ruled by both. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, as God shall stand by the right of the poor man to save him, and I inserted this from the judges of his soul. So that's really where the Alter Rebbe steps in with that individual point that it means judged, not ruled, and the difference between them will become clear. And while we're here, Rava said, by this yardstick, people such as ourselves are considered average, which you recall from the first chapter, the Alter Rebbe said, and quoted the next statement, whereupon Abaye said, Lo shavik marach l'chai l'chober, you do not let anybody live. I mean, how can we live? If you are a Beinoni, then we're all toast, and so on. Now, I just want to show you as an example. This is from the Art Scroll, which is an excellent, one of the greatest gifts to the Jewish people is this Art Scroll Talmud. And he gives you the note here. You see, I circled note 11. Although Rava or Rabba, there's two different ways that it's read, was completely righteous and thought indeed he feared that his evil inclination was merely dormant but not completely eradicated. Thus, by the above yardstick, he would be characterized as an average person or Beinoni. Okay? Now look in the parenthesis where they quote as the source of this explanation of this quote of Talmud. Can you see it on the screen? Likutei Amarim, Tanya, chapter 13, our chapter. Now the reason why I point this out is because not only does Tanya give you a different understanding of the Talmud, and it points out this nuanced word, but here, I'm again, using the Art Scroll, which is a scholarly, fantastic work of thorough analysis, and just amongst us chickens, it's not like they're running to Tanya for the first place, right? They're not looking at, this is not on their agenda to be promoting Tanya necessarily. And they are telling you that you can't understand the Talmud without understanding Tanya. So this isn't just another layer. Everyone can have another layer of understanding. Torah is infinite, and I'm not criticizing that. Torah is infinite. Everybody hopefully received that in the email. So you have it. Torah has many, many interpretations. They are quoting Tanya because without Tanya, that piece of the Talmud does not fully work. And that's the point here. And again, it's not their style to go and immediately quote Tanya as their first choice for interpretation. Okay. Based on all of this, we can now jump into this chapter, and we're going to start getting some answers to some of the questions that we raised way back in the beginning of Tanya. Chapter 13, Ubezeh Yuvan. And now, meaning now that we have these 12 chapters of introduction, meaning why didn't you just give me the answer back in chapter 1? Because back in chapter 1, we still thought that Beinoni meant, an average guy. Like we saw that in the English translation. And again, I'm not faulting them. That is the standard way it was understood. And they're just trying to get you through the study of the Talmud. And again, you could get through 2 words and be stuck forever, and that's not going to be a healthy form. So I'm not, God forbid, criticizing them. I'm just illustrating how that was the standard interpretation. Lashon Maimar Razal, the statement of our sages that we just read, that says Beinonim, the Beinoni, Zeh v'zeh shoiftan. This one and this one. Now, shoiftan is the key word there, which we've just talked about. The common interpretation, as we saw, was they are ruled. But as the Alter Rebbe will point out, what we've sometimes referred to as a diuk, a real precise reading that could get overlooked if we're not attentive, that the word shoiftan comes from the word shofet. A shofet is a judge. You're not hearing me? Is anybody else hearing me? Yes. Okay. Zeh v'zeh shoiftan. They are judged. And again, as we saw in the Art Scroll, the common interpretation, again, I'm not blaming, that was the standard way it was understood, means ruled. Now, who are the zeh v'zeh, those two pronouns, the this one and the this one? So the Alter Rebbe clarifies in the bracket, Perish Yetzer Tov, the Yetzer Hara. Now remember that there's a difference between the Nefesh Elokis and the Yetzer Tov and the Nefesh HaBahamis and the Yetzer Hara. The Nefesh HaBahamis, which is what we have talked about mostly until now, is interested in selfishness. It's interested in the pursuit of what's in it for me. The animating animal soul says, is this good for me? Now that doesn't mean that it's bad, that it's evil. It's just, is it good for me? And if you can convince me that it's good for me, I'll do it. The Yetzer Hara wants bad. It finds its pursuit is bad things. So if you offer the animal soul a kosher hamburger and a non-kosher hamburger that were equally as tasty and the same, but he'll choose the kosher one. Why not? What do I need the guilt for? The Yetzer Hara wants the bad one. That's what he wants. And on the flip side, the Yetzer Tov and the Nefesh Elokis, also a nuanced difference there. Okay. Dichsiv, as it says, this is a pasuk in Tehillim. Ki yamad liyamin evyain. He stands by the right side, and that's going to become important, and hopefully maybe you pick up on it already when we talk about the heart being right side is the godly side, love of Hashem, love of other people, and the left side being what's in it for me, basically the love of self. So he, which is a reference to Hashem, as we'll talk about, stands at the right side of the destitute one, the poor one, because in the realm of the what we call emotions, the godly soul is at a disadvantage because the animating animal soul is much stronger, much more attracted by things that are emotional, right? Madison Avenue was constantly bombarding the animal soul, not the godly soul. So in the character side, the animating, self-serving soul has got a great advantage, and the godly serving soul, the Nefesh Elokis, is Evyon, translated usually as poor, less advantage. He needs more help. So he, which is Hashem, stands at the right side of the poor person, Lohishia, to rescue him, Mishefte, that's crucial, from the, and now we know already the answer, from the judges. Okay, we already, that's the trick, or the trick is the wrong word, that's the nuance of his soul. Now, here we go. V'loy Amru, it does not say, Zeh v'zeh moishlim, this one and this one meaning the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Toiv, rule over him. We've seen this word before. Moshel means to dominate. I was told that it's even the etymological root of the English word marshal. It's the word to overpower. It's not a cooperative form of leadership like melech. A king is a cooperative form because the people want the king. A moshel means I'm bigger than you. You do what I say. Now it doesn't mean that. That again, it doesn't say. I'm sorry. The pasuk in Tehillim does not say that the person is ruled by both. And again, we saw that in the English there, but rather shofet. So here the Alter Rebbe says, "Ki kisheyesh eza shlita mamshala yetzahara bir katana." Because remember our rule of thumb that if at any moment there is authority or dominance of the Yetzer Hara in the small city. Remember, small city being the analogy of the human being, that just as two kings are battling for control over the small city, each one wants all of the resources of the city, the people, the natural resources, etc. Similarly, the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov are constantly, continuously, and uninterruptedly battling over the small city. It always wants authority over my thought, speech, action, character, behavior, intellect, all of my assets, so to speak. Um, I feel lefi shakala, even if that's for a passing moment. Nikra Russia ba'isa shah. Then he would be titled a Russia at that moment. Remember, we are not, one of the key messages of all of Tanya, the overarching message is, we are not here about the end of days. We are here for the day by day, for the moment by moment. That's what we're here for. So in the moment, am I aligned with Hashem or am I not aligned with Hashem? And as technology often proves, right? If it cuts out for a second, you're disconnected. Yes, it's true you can call back, but in that moment, if you're cut out, it's cut out. And we all can relate to how frustrating that can be when, the cell phone conks out. Even if it just conks out for a moment, you're disconnected and you got to call back, and it's really annoying. Well, at the moment, the animal soul or the Yetzer Hara is dominant, so he is at that moment, he is Russia. It has cut him off in the moment, in that moment. So that can't be the Beinoni, because if the Beinoni is dominated by the Yetzer Hara, even for a passing moment, at that moment, it's disconnected. He's called Russia. So back into the pasuk, the verse that says he to rescue him from the judges of his soul, to which prompts the Gemara to say that the Beinoni is judged. Again, that's the answer by both. Well, what does that mean? If he's ever, even for a moment, ruled by the enemy, even for a moment, he's been disconnected from Hashem, and at that moment, he's called Russia, and he's not Beinoni. So what's going on here? Ella, what then does it mean? Hayetzer Hara in the Beinoni, the Yetzer Hara, Einay Rakal Derech Mashal K'mo Shofet V'Dayan. He is rather like a judge. Dayan is also, again, the Alter Rebbe is emphasizing that the word dayan, it means a judge, and the word in the pasuk is shofet, and the word shofet again had been understood until Tanya, as we saw, to mean ruled, and now the Alter Rebbe is emphasizing that shofet is the word dayan. Dayan means a judge. Now, here's a little bit of the background. It's based on the Torah system, which is a little bit different than the standard, Perry Mason system in our experience. In a Torah court case, you have three judges. You have a panel of three, and each judge must put forth his opinion. So one says guilty, the other says innocent. So each one has put forth his opinion. But the third one is going to tip the scales, or whatever it's called. He's going to make the majority. And just because the guy put forward his opinion of guilty or innocent doesn't mean that that's going to be the final decree. So he puts forward his vote, but his vote gets shot down. So you can see where this is headed, hopefully. In the analogy, the Yetzer Hara says, whatever, sit on the couch. The Yetzer Tov says, get up and help this person. They have each put forward their opinion. Now, we haven't yet discovered it, but there's going to be a third judge. Who that third judge is, we'll get to, who's going to come forward and side with one or the other. Either they're going to side with the Yetzer Hara or they're going to side with the Yetzer Tov. And that's going to tip the scales. So even if the guy wins, whoever gets innocent, gets the verdict of innocent or guilt, whatever it doesn't mean it was unanimous. He still got a vote against him, but he won. Now, if he's the guy on trial and he gets innocent and it's only 2 out of 3, basically he couldn't care less, right? He doesn't care that he got a vote against him. He only cares that he gets to go free. At a deeper level, though, you might make the argument, just to follow this analogy another step along the way. Maybe he does care. He doesn't like the fact that there's somebody out there who thinks that he's guilty. So he might want to go back and demonstrate his innocence. Or, to take it again another step, the fact that somebody thought that he was guilty and this had to be a struggle leaves him open that the next time it comes down to it, he's worried. He's concerned. Last time I won by 1 vote. Maybe this time it's going to flip the other way. There's less certainty for the future. Well, same thing with the Beinoni. So the Beinoni has the struggle and he wins the struggle. So he gets up and he does the mitzvah. His Yetzer Hara still had a vote. And next time his Yetzer Hara is going to have a vote. And again, it's a 1 vote win. And every time there's just as much precariousness. So to use the silliest of analogies, it's no different than musical chairs. And just because I got the chair this time is not an indicator that I'm going to get the chair the next time. And the next time. Every time it's an independent battle. There's no certainty. And again, this is a great lesson in life. Like the old saying that breakfast never solved anything because a few hours later you got to eat lunch. And the answer being right. Well, that's sort of the point. We're not trying to solve it. We're trying to deal with it as it comes. And moment after moment as it comes, and that's what the game of life is about. After 120, there's no more struggles and challenges. Well, the Alter Rebbe will say later, just to put you at ease, in chapter 19, it gets easier. It does. But we don't want to go with that attitude, right? That's how we could potentially fall into getting casual and less attentive and less, what's the word I'm looking for? Like fixated and so on. And we get lulled into a certain complacency. We want to avoid that. We don't like that. So again, back into the text. Here's what's happened. So just because a judge puts forward his opinion, I say milchigs, doesn't mean we're going to pizza, because there's another guy, and he said fleischig, he wants hamburgers. So I put forward my opinion. I am a shofet, and again, remember in the Beinoni, the animal soul, the self-serving soul, the evil inclination is completely undeterred. He is not at all diminished from his aggression and grumpiness that he had from birth. There's been no diminishment of his ferociousness. But there's a counter opinion. So then we're stuck. This opinion says sit on the couch. This opinion says get off the couch and help that person. This one says meat. This one says milk. How are we going to break this tie? Well, there's a third opinion. So here the Alter Rebbe continues. Now we come to the third opinion. And that third opinion is going to break the tie. And whatever the third opinion is going to vote for, sit on the couch or get up, meat, milk, whatever it is, that's going to flip the script, and that's going to achieve the objective. Now the Alter Rebbe plays it out. Similarly, the Yetzer Hara, he always begins in the heart. right? Now, remember, it's an important distinction. We are not against the heart. I mean, we're not against what we call loosely emotions. There is, and even in all practice, there is a time when it has no place, right? When we are making a decision, we don't get to say, well, I really kind of feel bad for him. The law is the law. When we are forewarned not to show favoritism to the wealthy or favoritism to the poor and say, oh, but we should award him. No, there's got to be absolute cold-blooded decision making. The medical decision has to be not, well, I really like this guy. I don't want him to be sick, so I'll tell him he's not sick, or whatever it is, right? Or he's a bad guy, and even though he's healthy, I'll tell him he's sick, whatever it is. So we are not looking for that in our general relationship with Hashem, to stop with this emotional stuff and just be academic. That's not what we're shooting for. So what happens? The animal soul, he always has an advantage in the heart, right? No sin begins in the intellect because it's never a wise idea to sin. It's fun, it's indulgent, it tastes good, whatever, but it's never wise. So it begins in the heart. I want that. I want that. Now, what does it have to do? From the heart, oila limoyach. It goes, and you recall hopefully this from earlier, it goes to the brain, but very carefully. It doesn't want to get too mixed up in the brain because it knows that if I start thinking about it, I'm going to decide against it, right? Every salesman knows that he doesn't want you to think about it because the more you think about it, the more you'll make the rational decision and not the impulsive decision. And the impulsive decision is to buy the thing you don't need. So you get worked up in the heart, you override the brain, you do something foolish. But without the brain, I can't get it, right? Remember, that's what we talked about, that the animal has to eat grass because it has no intellect to cook. The human being has intellect, so he doesn't have to eat grass. But he's afraid that he gets too engaged in the intellect, and the intellect says, well, hold on, this is a stupid idea. Well, who asked you? I didn't ask you. I just asked you, how do I get what I want? He doesn't want to think about it too much. Because again, if he thinks about it, he may come to realize it's an unhealthy idea. And again, no sin is ever a smart idea. It's fun, but it's never smart to sin. Because why would I want to ruin my relationship with Hashem? But what happens? We get stupid, right? And we wind up doing stupid things. And very smart people can be very smart at being very stupid. And then, I just heard this yesterday, there's a book, it's literally called Everything is Obvious Once You Know the Answer. So in the look back, of course, right? But in the moment, what happens? We get dumb. So what happens? It goes to the brain, laharaboy, to think about it. Again, not to decide whether or not I should do it, but to devise a strategy to get it. Umiyad, this is the crucial word here. Immediately, that's the crucial word. Because remember, the Beinoni will never consider sinning. So immediately, the Beinoni says, he disagrees, Hashefer Hasheni, the second judge. He will not even let it linger for a moment. We find something as the curious parenthetical point. The Ravid, Avraham ben David, I think was his name, he wrote a commentary, somewhat you might call it even a criticism of Rambam. He was it's not personal, but he was a strongly annotated on Maimonides. And one of the things that he wrote about Rambam is, in his book of The Guide to the Perplexed, that sometimes he asks such good questions that he doesn't have as good an answer for, and it's going to leave people sort of lingering in a negative. So he made it like a point that pedagogically it's crucial that you provide an answer to philosophical questions that are raised. Because people shouldn't go home at night and start playing in their minds with these sort of challenging questions and not have an answer because maybe they don't come back tomorrow. So here, the animal soul puts forward its agenda. The godly soul, and again, the crucial word, miyad, immediately rejects it. It will not even entertain the thought for a moment. To share just a story of a guy I used to know, interesting fellow, not a Jewish guy, and he was involved in some very large charities, and he's a very pro-Israel guy. And they were at some meeting, and somebody raised, just like for table talk conversation, about something that was antagonistic to Israel. They're just talking, and next thing you know is they're taking a vote on what I thought we're just talk. Well, because that's how it comes, right? It begins incrementally. So the animal soul tries to sneak it past the brain, right? The brain is the gatekeeper, and the animal soul try to find a weakness. So the godly soul has to immediately reject it. That's the crucial. Immediately, the miyad, that's the crucial word. That's in the brain. So now the battle is on. The home field, the strength of the animal soul is in the heart. The home field, the strength of the godly soul is in the mind. So now they're in total lock horns between the animal soul's desire that's trying to just get the strategy from the brain and not the analysis, and the analysis of the brain that's trying to get the heart worked up to become excited about rejecting this indulgence idea. It goes to, where does it find an ally? Where does the godly soul find an ally? In the right side of the heart. So now they're locked in battle. And again, hopefully these are terms that we've recognized over the first 12 chapters. Now we can start to understand why we couldn't get to these answers until now, because we had to understand the operational processes of the self-serving animating soul and the godly serving godly soul, and that we couldn't just shortcut them and just, quote, get to the answer. We had to jump in. So here the Alter Rebbe says, what happens now? So we're at a standstill. The heart is battling with the mind to give me the strategy to get what I want. The mind is battling with the heart to get excited about doing the godly thing. And they're just in a deadlock. They're in a deadlock. What's going to break this tie? So just, again, back into the analogy of the court system, there's a third judge. The third judge comes in and he tips the scales. He listens to both and he tips the scales. And the halacha gedivri hamachriya, the law that is the actual decision, what we are actually going to do, whether we're going for pizza or burgers, whether we're sitting on the couch or we're getting off the couch, is, according to this third opinion, Hu HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's God. Ha'oizroi li'yetzer tov, who helps the Yetzer Tov. Kamaim Razal, like the statement says, Imoli HaKadosh Baruch Hu oizroi ein yachol lois. If not for Hashem's help, he would never be able to succeed. The Yetzer Tov, the godly soul, the God-serving soul, is at a total disadvantage to the self-serving animating soul. And literally, without Hashem's help, he would never win the game. He'd never survive. Let's just finish this line, then we're going to come back to it. Hu ha'or shemeya or Hashem al nefesh elokis. What is the mechanism through which Hashem helps this Yetzer Tov? That is through the light of God that radiates on the godly soul. Lios la Yisrael, to give it an advantage, l'shlita, and an authority, al sichlis haksil, on the foolishness of the fool, the Yetzer Hara, which is the Yetzer Hara. And why he's called the fool is not just because we're making fun of him. That's very precise. That's not just name calling. It's actually crucial. Like the superiority of light over darkness that we mentioned in the previous chapter. So let's back up. We'll start sort of at the end with a bizarre or a sort of obvious question. The obvious question is, as we said, the Yetzer Hara, the Nefesh HaBahamis, presents its desire. I want X, but I don't know how to do it. So I have to go to the brain to figure out how to get me what I want. So he comes to the brain and he says, get me what I want. But the brain is the home field, the power source of the godly soul. And the godly soul is, I was born today, but it wasn't yesterday. I'm not just giving you the answer. There's something more going on here, which is what the animal soul fears. I don't want you to think about it. Just do it, right? MasterCard, this is priceless. Oh, don't think about it. You deserve a break. Don't think about it. Because if you think about it, you're going to realize it's an unsmart, unwise, unhealthy thing to do. And I don't want you to think about it, right? American Express does not want you thinking. They just want you keep doing, keep doing, keep doing. Don't think about it. So it gets to the brain, and immediately, because if there's any hesitation, he's going to get the strategy and get out before you can talk him out of it. So he immediately says, "No, I'm not doing this." And he, that is the godly soul, that is more powerful, at a greater advantage in the intellect, but not exclusively there, sends a message to the emotional side and says, "Come on, let's get excited about doing the mitzvah." So we got these cross paths that are absolutely in a deadlock. The self-serving animal animating impulse that starts in the heart, that reacts to them. Oh, I see it, I want it, right? Advertising, it's dangled in front of my eyes. And then it says, "Mommy, can you buy this for me? And I promise you everything that you could ever possibly want. If you'll just do this one thing, I'll never ask you for anything ever again." And the brains could get, but no, there's no hesitation. Immediately he says, "No, this is not a godly thing." And he starts to send his message to the heart. So we're in a deadlock. So what's going to be the decision maker? Well, comes along Hashem, and he helps, remember the pasuk, to rescue the poor one from the judges of his soul. And Hashem comes in and tips the scales, which leads us to a beautiful question that only Tanya produces. And unfortunately, there's an answer to it. And the question is, so then how come anybody ever sins? Meaning, based on this formula, there's an impulse from the heart that goes to the brain, that's met with resistance, that starts to try and influence the heart. There at a deadlock, God steps in, boom, we win the game. So how do I ever sin? How do I ever sin? So that itself, the mere fact that we ask that question, is one of the great gifts of Tanya. Because the world says, oh, nobody ever does anything good. Everybody's just freakonomics, driven by their own personal incentive. People only do what's good for them. People only respond to some self-serving incentive. Nobody does anything that's good. They only do it because they like it and they're going to get something out of it. So we have to manipulate them to do good things by telling them that it's going to benefit them if they do good things. That's the attitude of the world. Tanya is the gift, or a gift of Tanya is that we are not imprisoned only by self-serving incentives. So much so that we are stunned. How could someone sin? Because based on this formula that we just laid out, every game should win because you got the deadlock and God steps in and so on. Well, unfortunately, there's an answer. Unfortunately, there is still a mechanism to sin. I know that shocks us all. One is we are lazy. We don't act out on it. The animal soul comes to the brain, and the brain is lazy. Meaning, we'll have it in the parsha in a couple of weeks. Moshe says to the Jewish people, "What is it that I ask of you? Only that you should fear him." So what we mean is, I can't control what happens to me. What is my free choice? What do I have free choice in? I only have free choice in whether or not I will exercise my skills. Meaning, again, if you think about it, the most important things in your life, you don't have free choice. You don't get to choose when you're born, where you're born, where your parents raised you. By the time you have agency, you've already been so preconditioned that it's pretty rare to actually have a choice free of any preconditioning or incentive. What do we have free choice on? Our engagement of our skills. So if the animal soul comes to the brain and the godly soul is a little lazy, I don't choose to assert myself. So again, just like in a physical fight, just because one guy is stronger than the other guy, if he's lazy, he's not going to succeed. The smaller guy will topple the bigger guy if the bigger guy is not engaged enthusiastically. That's unfortunately one way that the animal soul can win. Another way is that animal soul is so clever that he disguises his impulse as a smart idea. He disguises it as being something that's beneficial. And well, why didn't you know? So again, the answer is always everything is obvious once you know the answer. Yeah, and the look back, you go, yeah, I guess I should have invested in Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon, and not in Bernie Madoff, Pan Am, and TWA. Well, why didn't you know that? Well, everything is obvious once you know the answer. In the look back, you get to say, oh, yeah, I guess I should have done that. I guess I should have known that. But I didn't do that, and I didn't know that, and I didn't get that. So the animal soul is very clever in disguising his impulse. He doesn't say, "Hi, I'm something self-serving. Go and do this for me." He comes and says, "This is a virtuous thing to do. This is a beneficial thing to do. This is a godly thing to do," and so on. Then, what then is the value of what we do? I mean, if God steps in and saves the day, so what am I doing? Well, which is a lot harder than it sounds, we have to be willing to let God in. We have to be willing to allow Hashem to tip the scales to benefit us. That's crucial. That's an action that we can take. Two, we have to assert our rutzoin, our passion, which is to be connected with Hashem. That's what we have to do. We have to assert it. And then what we wind up with is this superiority that we talked about in the previous chapter from the Pasuk in Koheles, from Shlomo HaMelech, from King Solomon, that light is more powerful than dark. Not just that I like it better, but it's more powerful, just like it can never be so dark that if I light a candle, it won't light up. It always will light up. Similarly, I have to be aggressive. I have to light it. You know, there's a story of a man who came to the Rebbe, and and he said, "Rebbe, will you light it for me?" And the Rebbe said, "I can't light it for you. I can just give you the match. I mean, you have to do it yourself, right? No one else can do it for you." So that's the part that's up to us, whether we will assert our godliness. So again, the formula is simple. The implementation can be more challenging because, again, the animal soul presents himself in all kinds of temptation manners. Okay. So again, this seems to be a simple formula. We'll win every game. However, and you note here, there's a period and then the word It's the chitas for the 25th of Teves in the leap year. And whenever there's a period, that means hard break. And then the word means interruption. Meaning here we're going along. This sounds like a perfect plan. My animal soul will send his temptation to my intellect. My intellect will reject it. They'll be in battle. Hashem will step in and save the day, and everything is happy, hunky dory, peachy keen. So what happened? What happened? Well, however, and here again, it sounds a little bit disappointing, but don't be too disappointed. In the Beinani, the Ra, that is the self-servingness, is just as strong as it ever was. He has gotten off the couch every single time for 50 years. He has sided, but his animal soul is just as strong as ever. The classic thing, why do we have prison guards? There hasn't been a prison escape for 50 years, right? Because as soon as we don't have the guards, the prisoners escape. So again, struggle is not failure. And the Nefesh HaBahamis, the self-serving animating soul, the Yetzer Hara in the Beinani who has succeeded in preventing its expression every time, it has not at all been weakened. He's not giving up and going home. He, the Nefesh HaBahamis, is a devoted servant. Remember, Hashem put him there with the express mission to try and, I'll use the word distract or tempt us. And every time it fails, it does not become diminished. If anything, it might become that much more resilient. It's not giving up. It is, as we call it, playing the long game. It is still just as enraged, and remember the rule of the animal soul, it will not allow any pleasure to be passed up unless it's offered a greater pleasure. So, right, it won't eat this because it wants to save room for that. But the driving force of the animating soul is what's in it for me? How will it make my life more pleasurable? So he's willing to bypass one for another because the other one is budgeting, not because he conceptually aligns himself with this character trait. Um, it has not at all been diminished, and it has not been dislodged from its place at all. So again, this is the fear of overconfidence that at every moment that I succeed and I Bainani, I could potentially, and this is another ploy of the animating soul, I could start to think, well, maybe I don't have to work so hard because I'm immune. I am protected. I'm insulated from any temptation. But that's not the case. Rock, what then is the case? It has not been able to express itself in any of its humanity, but it's still putting forward its vote every time. And even though every time it loses, it's not surrendering. It has not given up the fight. It hasn't won, but it's still there just as strong as ever. Now, hopefully you can kind of see where we're going, because the first question that we asked in the beginning of Tanya is, why does the oath include that when the whole world is telling you you're a tzaddik, you should be in your eyes like a Russia? And then we have a rule, Pirkei Avos says, you should never think of yourself as Russia. So again, I hope that you can see where we're headed. Why is the whole world telling this guy that he's a tzaddik? Because they don't know what tzaddik means? No, because that's what they see. Because every single time he does the godly thing. He always does the godly thing. So the world is telling him that he's a tzaddik, not because the world doesn't know what tzaddik means, because that's what they can see. They see, and they can't see what he thinks, but every word he says, every action he does is in perfect alignment with the infinity of Hashem. So that's what they see. Since that's what they see, they say he's a tzaddik. What should he be aware of, even if he doesn't sense it at all, that he is, and the key word is, like a Russia. Like a Russia. Not that he is a Russia, but he's like. How is he like the Russia? Because remember, the Beinani, his animating, self-serving soul, his inclination for indulgence is not diminished at all. It's absolutely raging, just like it was the day he was born, or as we might say, just like a Russia, like a Russia. So here we see where we're headed. So now here we go. So why then has if this raging animal soul is there, why has it never succeeded? Because Hashem stands at the right side of this poor guy. And again, the poor guy is the reference to the godly soul, who's considered poor because he's at a disadvantage. Why is he at a disadvantage? Because the whole world is rooting for his animal soul. And when I'm hungry, I'm hungry. That's a very immediate reality, more so than the conceptual awareness of the infinity of Hashem. And it's shining on the godly soul. This is the help that God gives. He gives a boost to the godly soul. A curious point, just timely. We know at this time of the year, during the 3 weeks, we learn about the Beis Hamikdash. Because we can't build the Beis Hamikdash, so we learn about it. So what is the primary objective of the Beis Hamikdash? So this is a point of contention. Rambam says that the primary purpose of the Beis Hamikdash, not the only, but is the opportunity to do the mitzvahs that Hashem wants us to do. primarily the karbanos, the offerings that we can't do outside the Beis Hamikdash. Ramban says the primary, and again, no one's disagreeing that all of them are true. What is primary? He says the primary purpose of the Beis Hamikdash is to be a space where we can see God. Meaning, a person, again, no matter what the circumstance is, starts to feel overwhelmed by his animating soul. He starts to feel bombarded by all the indulgences that are constantly dangling in front of his eyes and clamoring for his attention. So he needs a little inspiration, right? He needs something to give him a boost. So what's the ultimate booster? You go to the Beis Hamikdash, you see all the miracles, like we read in Pirkei Avos, the 10 miracles that happen constantly, and you get a booster, right? This is why Noah didn't want to leave the ark. In the ark, the wolf lie with the lamb. The Jews didn't want to leave Mount Sinai. This is where God had spoken to us. They didn't want to leave the sea. That's where they saw the greatest miracle of the splitting of the sea. They wanted that itim mizumanim, that special time. So what happens? We go out into the world because that's our mission, is to make the world a godly place. And out there in the world, again, we get all the signals: buy this, eat this, do this. And sometimes it can be really hard to resist, but we know we have to. So we need Hashem's help. So like we say before the Amidah, Hashem, my lips open up, my mouth shall say your praises. Help me to serve you. I need help. I'm at a tremendous disadvantage. I'm one lamb surrounded by 70 wolves. Help me out here. So Hashem does by, again, giving him that inspiration. So you go to the Beis Hamikdash, your Nefesh Elokis gets inspired. Hopefully you find some other way in the meantime, Shabbos, for Brengens, learning, whatever it is, you find those moments that give you the boost, right? So you daven in the morning, it gives you the boost. You go out into the world and it's hard and you hope to hold on until the next opportunity. But as a result of this, know ye that even though you have succeeded, and you've succeeded every single time, your animal soul has not at all been diminished. At least you don't know if it's been diminished. And it's coming roaring back. So, okay, I finally got over that time, and now I get another one. Difference between men and boys is the size of their toys. So we move along, and as we grow, we find new things to be distracted by, and new temptations, and new magic beans dangled in front of our eyes. And therefore, Kamayim Razal, and that's why the statement that Tanya begins with tells us, even though the whole world is telling you you're a tzaddik. Not because they don't know what the word tzaddik means, and not because they're just trying to flatter you, and not because it's because that's what they can see. The world can only see the finished product. The world can only see that this is what you've got. This is what you did. That's all they can see. What they can't see is what's going on internally. Russia, and here's the answer to the first question. We now can address this question. Always be in your own eyes just like a Russia. Not that you are a Russia, but you are like a Russia. Because like a Russia, the animating soul is raring and roaring just as much as it was from the beginning. The inability of the animal soul to find expression is not a diminution of that animal soul. He's still trying. You open up that lion cage for a moment, the lion is going to leave. Why? He's just sitting there. He looks like he's just sitting there. He looks like he's asleep. What's so bad? But again, that one moment, boom, he's out. That's the meaning now of this opening line of Tanya. Again, why is the whole world telling you you're a tzaddik? Because that's what they can see. What should you always remember? You are kirush, v'loy Russia mamish. You're not literally a Russia, meaning you haven't actually violated, but you are like the Russia. That's the key to the answer to that initial question. Now we understand it. Way back in the beginning, we thought it meant that you should see yourself like a Russia. And then we said, well, that's not a good idea because either psychologically, you'll either give up and say, well, forget it, Or you won't care. Oh well, everybody sins. That neither one of those is going to be good, either despondence or irreverence. And we have Talmudic source in Pirkei Avos that says, "Do not consider yourself Russia." So we were stuck. But now that we understand that Russia is not only about behavior, it's about the impulse that this guy, again, why is everyone saying he's a tzaddik? Because that's what they see. Again, not because they're dumb and not because they don't know what tzaddik means or because they're just trying to flatter him. It's because they are seeing tzaddik-like behavior. So, what's the difference between the tzaddik and the Beinoni? The Beinoni struggles and the tzaddik doesn't. What's the difference between the Beinoni and the Rasha? The Rasha fails and the Beinoni doesn't. So he acts like the tzaddik and he struggles like the Rasha. That's the Beinoni. So struggle is not failure, but failure is failure. What should you think of yourself as a Beinoni? And don't believe the world. The world says you would never do that. You are beyond it. You have completely eradicated your animal soul. That is the level of tzaddik. Because his animal soul is just as strong as it ever was. It has not been diminished at all. And this is, again, an observable phenomena. Sometimes a person, let's just take the simplistic trajectory, they become what we have colloquially referred to as the Baal Tshuva. So they've taken on mitzvah observance that was not in part of their upbringing. And then sometimes they do that with great enthusiasm, but it goes away. You say, well, what happened? Well, they thought, okay, it's really hard for me. I'm new at this. It's really hard for me. I've only been doing it for a year, 2 years, 2 minutes, whatever it is. Well, it's still hard. I give up. What's the point? Because we misunderstand the objective, meaning we compare it to trying to learn a skill. So if I want to learn to play the piano, I practice after 5 years. If I can't play the piano, I give it up. Like that's it. I'm not going to be able to play the piano. But Torah and mitzvahs is not that way. It's not about winning. It's not about being good at it. It's about being in the moment. So yes, it's frustrating. I still can't remember, when do we stand up and when do we sit down? When do we lean to the left and not lean to the left? When do we eat and when do we fast? So it's like, forget it. I'm not good at it, so I give up. This is the mistaken premise, that we presume that it's an objective we're trying to reach. And if I can get there, I win. And then when I win, it's not so hard. And what's the response? That's after 120. Meanwhile, our goal is, again, not to suffer, God forbid, but that's what life is, to push back against it, the constant struggle to do the right thing. So struggle is not failure, but the Yetzer Hara convinces you it is. See, it's still difficult. You still, Rivka Imenu walked past idolatry. She still was tempted. She said, I guess I'm a failure. I thought I left all that. I thought now I'm with the good people. Why do I still notice the not good stuff? That must mean I'm a failure. And then Hashem says there's two forces within you. So you're still going to notice the cheeseburgers. So you think by noticing the cheeseburgers means that I'm a cheeseburger person, and therefore I might as well give it up. Who am I kidding? But that's a misunderstanding of the goal. The goal is not to win. The goal is to be in the moment at every possible time. And that's what we're reminding him, that it has not left him at all. On the contrary, guess what? Your animal soul is literally being fed at every moment, meaning the fact that you have to live in this world, and in this world you have to deal with materialism, and you have to deal with the constant bombardment of the affirmation of the physical and the human, is only going to strengthen your animal soul. So we think, oh, it's easy for that guy. He doesn't have my struggles, right? He doesn't have your struggles. He has his own struggles. This is the ultimate answer. Our job is to be like the tzaddik, and our identity is likely to be like the Russian. Now it gets easier. The Alter Rebbe tells you that later. He's not telling you that now. So again, when the person says, well, how come it's still hard for me? How come I still don't remember which way and it's still hard for me? And again, therefore, the Yetzer Hara says, so come on, you tried it, like give it up. You're not going to be a piano player. What's even the point of practicing? You're not going to ever be good at it. What's the point of even trying? That if that was the goal, you might say that, but that's not the goal. The goal is to be in the moment. In the moment, the story of Ramindel Futterfass trying to persuade the guy to put on tefillin. He didn't speak English. The guy didn't speak Hebrew. He just said, me Jew, me tefillin, you tefillin. Today, we're both tefillin wearers. I put on tefillin yesterday and I will tomorrow, and you didn't? I don't know. Right now, we're in the moment. To be in the moment. This is the crucial part. Now, are they going to accept me? And am I going to make it? Am I going to win? Am I going to be in the moment? This is that crucial point. So the answer to our questions are, A, we are judged, but a judge just puts forth his opinion. Doesn't mean his opinion is the majority and executed opinion. And we now have the answer to the first question. Why are we told to consider ourselves like a Russia when the whole world thinks we're a tzaddik? And again, the world thinks we're a tzaddik, not because they don't know what that means, because they see tzaddik-like behavior. That's all they see. And we have to consider ourselves like the Russia because our Russia, our Yetzer Hara, Nefesh Bahamas is just as ferocious as it ever was. All right, to be continued.